In this video, I'm going to give you the rundown on our stress hormones, which are also known as adrenaline and cortisol, or I often will say the adrenals. The adrenals refers to your adrenal glands, which sit right above your kidneys, and that's in your middle to lower back. And this is what creates your cortisol and adrenaline, also known as the stress hormones. So what we're going to go through in this video is kind of why these are so important. And then I'm going to go through what else that your stress hormones or adrenals actually affect in the body. Also some things that you may be doing that are contributing to, kind of an imbalance or insufficiency, or kind of these just kind of being out of whack. And then we're going to go into how to tell if you are having a problem with your adrenals, if this might be something that's an issue for you, and then also how we can actually improve those. So the reason that stress hormones are so important is because this is how our bodies basically survive. This is how our bodies keep us alive. When we perceive something like a lion or tiger or, something that's going to chase us, all of a sudden our body signals these stress hormones and it's like, hey, we're in danger, we might die, let's get everything on high alert, let's become super focused, let's get a lot of energy, and let's just beat this so that we can survive, right? Great, wonderful, if we're actually out running lions and tigers. But the problem is that we're not. And what happens is that our body still sees these events that we perceive as stressful, whether it's a work deadline or our kids or whatever it is that's going on in our life. We perceive these as stressful, we still get that same response in the body. We become very alert, we get a little bit more energy, our heart might start to race, and we're having the same stress response. Unfortunately, when we keep doing this over and over and over, and our body thinks we're in this constant state of survival, it kind of starts to break down a lot of things along the way. And the reason that this happens is because these hormones, this mechanism is so important because it keeps us alive. So if we are thinking that we constantly need to stay alive, we're going to use all of the resources. Like, this is going to be the most important thing that we make and we do. And as a result, pretty much all of our other hormones and all of the other functions in the body are going to be affected. And when I say pretty much everything in the body, this comes to your sleep, whether you're sleeping good or not, this is going to reflect back on your stress hormones, how much energy you have, even your thyroid hormones, because your thyroid, actually the conversion of those hormones is interrupted by these stress hormones. Your digestion, if we're in a stressed out state, we do not digest food as well. If we are fighting for survival and we're in this fight or flight kind of state, it is not time for us to really be eating, and our digestion, those juices and that process doesn't happen as efficiently as it should. It also interferes with our estrogen and progesterone. And this is really important to know. And it makes a lot of sense because our estrogen and progesterone, these are our sex hormones. These are our reproductive hormones. If our body is trying to stay alive, it is not going to be concerned with making babies, because if we aren't alive, we can't reproduce. So if we are in the state of survival, if we are producing too many stress hormones, if we're kind of constantly in the state, we are going to probably have some issues with our estrogen and progesterone being high or low, or, not, fluctuating as they should throughout the month. And oftentimes, if you have, really bad either PMS symptoms or even menopause symptoms, looking at the stress hormones is going to be a really, really important factor for this reason. Also, I know a lot of people, think about their weight. And when it comes to our weight, our stress hormones actually will cause our body to store excess weight. And the reason for this is not because it hates us. The reason for this, initially a lot of times it's a protection mechanism. It wants to store visceral fat around the organs because we're afraid for survival. And so we need to, toughen up a little bit. And oftentimes this will be a little bit harder of a fat tissue. But if we are in the state of survival and we do have issues with our stress hormones, this will absolutely affect our weight and how we store weight. So as you see, our stress hormones really affect everything else that's in the body. So these are really, really important. This is not a step that we can overlook. This is not something that we can just breeze by and say hey, I'm going to eat this way, but I'm not going to address the stress. We have to address the stress issue. So if you're wondering how to tell if you might be having, some kind of adrenal insufficiency, or if there might be something going on with your stress hormones, here are some of the things that you can kind of look for. So number one, you're going to feel overly stressed. If you feel stressed all the time, if you feel like you're unable to manage your stress, that could be a sign of, adrenal insufficiency. Some other signs include, if you're eating healthy, working out, you feel like no matter how hard you work out, your weight is staying the same or your weight keeps going up. And so you try to exercise harder or eat less and it still doesn't change or it gets worse. That's another sign. If you are tired throughout the day, but you have more energy at night, that's another sign. If you're unable to fall asleep, usually like kind of have a racing mind before you go to bed, or if you kind of wake up in the middle of the night wide awake, that could be a sign as well. If you have a lack of energy that, oftentimes caffeine doesn't help, that's another sign. Pain or knots in the body is also something else. I know for me, when I was working and I was very stressed out, I would feel these big knots just coming, in my neck. And at the time I didn't know that I probably had some adrenal issues. Figure that out much, much later, but I had like serious knots in my body. And when you have those kind of knots that are from tension, if they're from tension, might be having some kind of adrenal problems as well. There's also some other kind of little symptoms. These are sometimes rare, but sometimes people, definitely report having these. Sensitivity to light or salt cravings, or sometimes even acne. Sometimes in a stressful situation, people will break out. And then sometimes it'll go away and sometimes it'll just kind of like hide under the surface and we can get rid of it. But this is just something to know that might pop up for you. So now that you understand, what to look for or what kind of signs that might be pointing to having adrenal insufficiency or just kind of having something going on with your stress hormones, maybe they're not in the most optimal place. We should go over kind of what causes stress in the body. What are the things that we might be doing that are causing stress in the body? So number one is just the events that we see as stressful. So, like the day-to-day things, the things that we think, are actually kind of causing stress, just what we think of as stress. But then there's also the things that we're doing kind of on a physical level. So a lot of us, aren't fueling our bodies for the activities we do. We might not be eating enough carbs for the activities we're doing, and that puts our body kind of in a stressed out state. Or we're just not eating enough food, enough calories to give our body what it needs to do what we're doing. And so it's like, hey, I'm kind of starving here. And starving is a stressful situation because starving is a survival, we need food to survive. Starving is seen as a perceived threat. So that's also going to cause stress in the body. And on that note, when we think about intermittent fasting or fasting, for women, I really don't recommend fasting for more than 12 hours. And usually that's just, like from the time you eat dinner to the time you wake up and eat breakfast, like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. or something like that. You can play with that a little bit, but when we're thinking about just completely skipping meals, like completely kind of skipping dinner or breakfast or doing these 16-hour fasts for women with our hormones, it just doesn't usually work. And again, always listen to your body, but this is something that a lot of times we see work really well for men. And because of the fluctuations in our hormones and what we need, it doesn't usually work for women. Another thing that may be causing stress in your body is, just over exercising. And there's a whole video on how to exercise. If you think you're dealing with an adrenal problem, you want to do certain exercises and avoid other exercises. And I am a big proponent of exercising. I think that, let's go run some marathons or do whatever, but we need to make sure we're fueling our body in a way so that we can do that. And also, if you're dealing with adrenal problems, there are certain exercises that are just going to kind of make things worse, and you can eventually get back to them, but you might want to be kind of mindful about that. A few other things that may be causing stress in your body are excessive caffeine. So having more than like 1 cup of coffee a day, if you're just like living on caffeine, that is constantly kind of putting your body in a state of stress, and having caffeine on an empty stomach. So a lot of us will wake up and have coffee first before we have breakfast. I encourage you not to do this, to at least get something in your body, that has some like healthy fats, healthy proteins, something before you have coffee. And if you check out that morning drink section, there is a really great way to, make your coffee, and it kind of goes over all of that and how to do that. So now we understand, kind of how the stress hormones work, why they are so important, what they affect in the body, which is everything, how to tell if this might be an issue for you, and then some of the things that might have come up that you are doing that are kind of contributing to this. So now I really want to go over, how we can actually improve this. And remember to just take this one step at a time. So the first thing we want to do is really eat in a way that supports our hormones. And if you go through the food section and understand how to create a balanced plate, that's going to be one of the most important factors. So eating the balanced plate, especially when it comes to, eating enough carbs, eating enough fats, things that sometimes we overlook, getting enough protein, but kind of combining all that. Check out that video. It goes fully in depth on that. And on that note, making sure that we are properly fueling our workouts. We're not working out on an empty stomach. We are having at least a little bit of carbs before we work out to give us that energy for our workouts. And then afterwards, getting sufficient protein, preferably just having a balanced plate type of meal afterwards. So properly fueling your workouts can really help improving this. And doing the right types of workouts for where you are. If you are completely in adrenal fatigue stage, or you're experiencing adrenal insufficiency, you've got to slow down your workout. So make sure you check out the video that kind of goes into the workouts that are more appropriate when you're kind of in that stage. You also may want to take some supplements. These are supplements. They're not meant to replace eating healthy and doing all of these other things. But make sure you check out that video for some of the specific supplements that you can incorporate. There's also a full video on a breathwork exercise, because breathing is one of the best ways that we can just stop stress hormones in their tracks. So if you feel yourself getting really stressed out and you can get yourself to a place where you can just take some deep breaths, you won't have that full cascade of all of the, stress response in the body. That is wonderful. And besides that, if we can start to just calm our nervous system at different points throughout the day, usually before meals or before bed, especially, this can be really powerful. So check out that breathwork video for the breathwork exercise, because it's easy, it's free, it's accessible to anybody. We really should be doing these multiple times a day. And finally, we cannot address all of the physical components without addressing what is going on up here. So if we do not start changing the way that we think about situations and stress, if we just constantly see our life as like, it's just stressful and there's nothing I can do about it, we can be doing all of the things to support our body, but we're still, putting in all of this extra stress up here. We're still sending these stress signals to our body. So if we really, really want to work on our stress hormones, if we really want to get to the root cause of what's affecting so many other things in the body, the mindset part is very, very important. So there's a video that talks about how we can do this. Yes, it is absolutely 100% possible. I have done it myself through some really, really hard, really, really stressful times. And when we can start to rewire that piece, it is truly life-changing. So make sure that you check out the video for the mindset piece of changing the way that we perceive stress as well. The final thing that I want to remind you, and this is a very, very important point, is that your adrenal glands take time to heal. You cannot undo what you have probably spent a whole lifetime of doing in just a few weeks. I would love if we could. The honest truth is that it takes about 6 months for your adrenal glands to kind of fully heal if you're doing kind of everything that you can, if you have mitigated your stress, if you have taken the supplements, eaten correctly, if you're doing everything, not putting extra stress in your body. It takes about 6 months to heal, but that's not like a hard deadline, because there's probably along the way, you're still going to be experiencing some stress. But that being said, don't freak out. It doesn't mean along that way, you're not going to have wins and you're not going to notice improvements. Like, you absolutely will. So what I usually see happen is that, if you start taking a couple of supplements, if you start working on some of the mindset, stop doing the things that are causing extra stress, and you really understand, how to put together a balanced plate and eat in a way that supports your hormones. When you start doing all these things, very shortly after, usually in the first couple months, you will notice a big improvement in energy. Your sleep often improves. Your mental, kind of capacity, like the way that you feel stress will improve. So there's a lot of improvements on this journey, but I will say that oftentimes weight loss comes at the end of it. And what I often see happen is that we're like, okay, I feel better, I have energy, I'm sleeping, all this is great, but like my weight hasn't changed. So like I need to like work out harder, starve myself, eat less, and we start going back to these habits that kind of caused the problem in the first place. And so I just want to encourage you to really see all of these other wins along the way and realize that your body is healing and understand it takes time. And I will be here along with you along this journey the entire way. And if you do want to kind of track and get a gauge, then you can use that temperature. It's not, 100% foolproof, but it will give you a little bit of an idea. So you can start to see like, okay, now that they've come into this range and they're in this healthy place, now I can expect that I can like, maybe push a little bit more or do a little bit harder workouts because I'm a little bit past the healing phase now. So definitely talk to me if you need more help with that. I hope you really understand how our stress hormones work. Make sure you check out the rest of the videos in this section so that you can just start working on the little pieces of this one at a time.